High frequency. Yeah. Sync up. Already. Yay. I get up with the frequency each and every morning. Thanks, practice gratitude, commence brainstorming. Live, awake, excited, new day, new me. TSA, courtesy of JRE and Scott Free. Too many folks shallow, scared to drown in the deep end. And I ain't pointing fingers, best believe I was one of them. The pain I was numbing it, self-inflicted punishment. The streets I was running in led me to consciousness. Yes, they can steal my flows, but can't block my shine, baby. You see my glow? Now I live in the light, radiating love. Sun, you're a star, as below, so above. Am I too metaphysical? Are you over analytical? So many situations get critical. I'm a warrior, survivor is an understatement. Started subterranean, now we in the cosmos on some Milky Wavy shit. Sun-kissed, melanin rich, health is wealth, we live abundant. Connected with the oneness, I'm off my dumb shit. I bring to you substance more specific, life is synchronistic. All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact. Physicality beyond that, high frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Both stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude. Heaven or hell, and you leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
Day to day just hoping, going through the motions, staring at the doors, who could ever get this open? Till I uncovered the secret to keeping it real. I got in touch with my soul, expand my frequency field. We playing follow the leader ain't going nowhere. That's why I'm living my life with a sovereign mind. All I want in this world is to spread love and greatness to you, using my music for we out of time. So for the divine, I'm doing my due diligence, giving some peace to views that's too militant. Doing it different, I got purpose and position. Feel the vibration, transmission is the mission. Need you to listen to these words, my dude. I swear my third eye got a bird's eye view. And do you wanna sync up? Cause I do. Surfing this wave, follow as we ride through.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact. Physicality beyond that, high frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude. Heaven or hell, it's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
Let it marinate, cause this is very great. To every state, the burden on my back, well, I carry weight. High frequency, high power, free spirit. Talking to the man upstairs, and yeah, he hear it. Man, I'm riding the wave, inspired by the days when we sparked up, that was the light of the haze. But now I'm synced up, yeah, my drink's up. Am I drinking again? Well, you know, yeah, the gig's up. Freedom ain't free, believe them, they not me. The oppressor knows my melanin rich, and I'm scot-free. That means I got away. BS, not today. Stop and say we good, okay, no more drops today. This the high frequency, they gon' feel this. Still with optimism, but still I'm the realist. They gon' feel this, yeah, real quick. Bring the chorus in, that's real shit.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact. Physicality beyond that, high frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude. Heaven or hell, it's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real. Peace to the gods, brother Yusuf found. High frequency radio, yeah, we on that. Peace, brother Paul Savage, you already know. You are locked in, tuned in live. High frequency radio. Sync up. High frequency, yeah, sync up, already, yay. I get up with the frequency each and every morning. Thanks, practice gratitude, commence brainstorming. Live, awake, excited, new day, new me. PSA, courtesy of JRE and Scott Free. Too many folks shallow, scared to drown in the deep end. And I ain't pointing fingers, best believe I was one of them. The pain I was numbing it, self-inflicted punishment. The streets I was running in led me to consciousness. Yes, they can steal my flows, but can't block my shine, baby. You see my glow? Now I live in the light, radiating love. Sun, you're a star, as below, so above. Am I too metaphysical? Are you over analytical? So many situations get critical. I'm a warrior, survivor is an understatement. Started subterranean, now we in the cosmos on some milky wavy shit. Sun-kissed, melanin rich, health is wealth, we live abundant. Connected with the oneness, I'm off my dumb shit. I bring to you substance more specific, life is synchronistic. All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Whole stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. Then you leave a trail, the high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
From day to day just hoping, going through the motion, staring at the doors, who could ever get this open? Till I uncovered the secret to keeping it real. I got in touch with my soul, the fan my frequency feel. We play and follow the leader ain't going nowhere. That's why I'm living my life with a sovereign mind. All I want in this world is to spread love and greatness to you, using my music for we out of time. So for the divine, I'm doing my due diligence, giving some peace to views that's too militant. Doing it different, I got purpose and position. Feel the vibration, transmission is the mission. Need you to listen to these words, my dude. I swear my third eye got a bird's eye view. And do you wanna sync up? Cause I do. Surfing this wave, follow as we ride through.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. It's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real.
Let it marinate, cause this is very great. To every state, the burden on my back, well, I carry weight. High frequency, high power, free spirit. Talking to the man upstairs, and yeah, he hear it. Man, I'm riding the wave, inspired by the days when we sparked up, that was the light of the haze. But now I'm synced up, yeah, my drink's up. Am I drinking again? Well, you know, yeah, the gig's up. Freedom ain't free, believe them, they not me. The oppressor knows my melanin rich, and I'm scot-free. That means I got away. BS, not today. Stop and say we good, okay, no more drops today. This the high frequency, they gon' feel this. Still with optimism, but still I'm the realist. They gon' feel this, yeah, real quick. Bring the chorus in, that's real shit.
All is energy, fact, over fiction when I rap. That high frequency, yeah, we on that. Sync with the most divine, catch contact, physicality beyond that. High frequency, we on that. Mind over matter, thoughts not scattered. Co-stars co-creating, spiral up, no latitude, heaven or hell. It's in you, leave a trail. The high and low polarities, the vibrations, they all real. Peace to the gods, brother Yusuf Bound. High frequency radio, yeah, we on that. Peace, brother Paul Savage, you already know. You were locked in, tuned in live. High frequency radio. Sync up. Sync up. Sync up.
You're listening to Mobile Oasis with your host, Taj Tarik Bey. Exclusively on High Frequency Radio Network, the baddest radio network on the planet.
Islam. It's Taj Tarik Bey for Mobile Oasis on High Frequency Radio. Your call-in number is 424-222-5250. And I'm Taj Tarik Bey, your host for Mobile Oasis. And I'm honored to be here with you today on High Frequency Radio. a humanitarian and informative communications venue. I will be hosting this show for your honor, for your respect, and for your considerations from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon. This day or degree is Thursday, known in Moorish Latin as Jueves, being the 5th day of the week, and ruled by the planet Jupiter. The holy name for this degree, or Eloah, is Sakael, and as the schedule may allow, I trust to be with you on Thursdays to come. Recognizing the unity of life, we thank you and honor you for sharing your time with us, and trust that our sharing and communications will manifest as nurturing remedial dispensations, bringing forth some greater good and functionality. And as we appeal to the higher principles within ourselves to help as an ancillary in the great universal humanitarian movement, we trust that you will do the same, promoting and supporting the works needed and necessary in helping to uplift fallen humanity. And with that being said, we encourage you to bring the best that your heart has to offer, and let us sit down at the round table and, with good intent, get some work done. And we greet you in peace. High Frequency Radio, Moabite Oasis. I want to share with you a little bit of information that is usually preserved by the adepts, etc. And this is the adepts in all organizations, etc. And that is just as a synopsis on the issue of the Norse. Now, the Norse essentially corresponds in philosophy and in ancient history with intelligence and intellect. Now, the Norse is sometimes logically equated with intellect and intelligence, and it's a philosophical term for the faculty of the human mind, which is described in classical philosophy as necessary for understanding what is true or what is real. Now, when you look at the word intellect, also look at it from the verb or the base on understanding, the word intellection. Keep that in mind. And this is sometimes used in philosophical context, etc., by many of those who transfer the information from culture to culture, from age to age, etc. And usually when the researchers or the adepts may look at it, it will usually be dispensed as a projection of Greek philosophy. But know this for sure, part of the operations of the hiding of history is the misplacement of its origin. And understand that the Norse principle supersedes Greek, and Greek is actually simply a modern cover-up for actually ancient Hekupta history and philosophy, which they will often refer to as Egyptian philosophy, etc., and also for Ethiops, or the dividing line of the great Superdivere, or the ancient Canaanites, Moabites, Hekuptans, that they call Egyptians, etc., Asiatic Africans. And so this principle of the Norse has a root in all of the world's major religions, but it is usually preserved only for the priesthood and is not usually exposed to the masses, for the masses have a concept of a personification of what they call the God principle, when all of the high priests look at it as the perfection of thought, of reason, of understanding, of mind, etc., of good sense, or the activation of the pineal gland, which is the mind's eye, and the illumination of all the senses of the body, which comprises the Norse, and thus what the modern people refer to as God. It is in fact not a person, but is in fact actually the energies of that which is operative in nature's law, and thus the principle of nature's law and nature's God, which is deciphered into what you would call the principles of civilization that constitute the nature of man and thus the origin of constitutions for governments on the planet, period. That's a fact. Now, I want to talk about some of these things that we're dealing with in these days that have become problematic. And as you all know, some of you are aware of those things that were done by the hands of the popes of Rome, etc., that manifest into the problems that we have today in relationship to human trafficking, or what is connotatively referred to as modern slavery on the planet, etc., by virtue that conquest of the Christendom hegemony, which is at the root of the Inquisition operations and comprises the hegemony mission. And it essentially is guided by conquest, by color, by coercion, and by counterfeit. So all operations to bring about the hegemony mission of the Inquisition, as far as it relates to operations in government and in civilization, are based in ens legis and other instruments or operations, all of which are based in or by the purpose or by the guide points done in what you would call color or colorable operations, by coercion. That means threat, duress, coercion, death, murder, genocide, theft, etc., and by counterfeit. In that, we're talking about substitutes, artifices, artificiality, impostorship, impersonation, etc. So all operations under the operations of the hegemony expressed in the bullas and dictums of the popes of Rome are manifested or have their root in color, coercion, and counterfeit. And so we'll just for the listeners take some notes, and we'll just give you some reference points, not all of them, but some of the primal reference points that were set forth under the Spanish Inquisition to bring about the social, economic, political, politics, engineering, economic structures, etc. Human trafficking will be part of the conversations that all of us have been having from generation to generation in these contemporary times that have affected us socially, politically, and economically. And so this list comprises an aggregate and a general synopsis of some of the major bullas of Christendom and the Christian, or what is called Christendom hegemony, which were issued by the popes of Rome. Now, these bullas that we'll mention are used as directives and for all occupying European Christian colonial administrative operations and applied for managing colonialism in the Western Hemisphere and placed upon the world through what you would call the three-star system of the substitute sovereigns on the planet, which comprises the Vatican, referred to sometimes as the papacy, the District of London in England, Washington, D.C., that is operating from Turtle Island, or the North Gate, i.e. North America, which is a private construct of the popes of Rome, etc., referred to as the District of Columbia, which is not the land, but actually a political jurisdiction of operations under the Jesuit order. Now, the bullas that I will mention, are not the limit of the pontiffs, which also is referred to as the Holy See, and the bishoprics. That's the collection of all the clergy under the Holy See of the Christian hegemony, etc., and their missionary dictates but do not cognitively and emphatically embody and express the true character. But they do, these bullahs do cognitively and emphatically embody and express the true character and the nature of the perfidious hegemony mission, which is deemed for world conquest. Now, the church bullahs and dictums were ecclesiastically and politically put in place to promote the injurious and negating of social, political, colonial, and hegemony-oriented foundation of and for all inquisition and hegemony operations, and particularly launched from North America. And these were pledged by their actors, by their administrators, by their personnel, and by their agents and their contractors, etc. Now, these guide points are used by pseudo-public and private operatives for profit directed to the owners and operators of all the corporate state entities and their entity persons, and the same are executed and directed via color of law and by color of authority and by color of office and by ens legis dispensations. Now, this is used structurally to formulate policies which are public and private and are fostered against all Asiatic, African, natural peoples of the planet Earth. Now, some of these bullahs that comprises the heart of the nature of the operations politically, socially, and pseudo-religiously issued by the popes of Rome are unum sanctum. That's U-N-U-M, capital S-A-N-C-T-U-M, unum sanctum. And that was issued November the 18th of 1302 by Pope Boniface VIII. And you have, fourth by Pope Nicholas V in 1452, Dum Diversus. Dum Diversus, capital D-U-M, capital D-I-V-E-R-S-A-S, Dum Diversus, 1452. And then you have Pontifex Romanus, or Romanus Pontifex of 1455. That was set forth also by Pope Nicholas V. Then you have Intercatera Divina of 1493, set forth by Pope Alexander V. And of course, with the Inquisition operations, the agreement of the Christian nations, or what you call the Roman nations, for the enforcement of the same is under the secret treaty of Verona. And then you have the Cestui Act of 1666. Cestui, capital C-E-S-T-U-I, capital Q-U-E, capital A-C-T. Cestui Act of 1666. Now, for those scholars and researchers, look up chapter 11 and chapter 18 and chapter 19, chapter 2. All of these bullahs or dictums collectively are roughly referred to as the doctrine of discovery. These embody the outline of directional functions and purposes of the doctrine of discovery. So when the doctrine of discovery as a policy for the hegemony mission amongst all secret societies who are working on the dark side, and also for the reverends in the communities of persons who are under occupation, they'll usually have a spy center within 4 blocks in any direction, sometimes called the Great Circle, which is a German word for church. They keep tabs and report to the popes of Rome, and most in the modern times under their skull and bones agreement called the 501c3 kickback agreement. So collectively, unum sanctum, dum diversus, Romanus Pontifex, Intercatera Divina, Secret Treaty of Verona, the Sister-Q Act of 1666 collectively are referred to and comprise what is known as the doctrine of discovery. And of course, you have subdivisional aspects of the operations under Unum Sanctum, as per the Christian Black Codes of 1724, which were adopted into all the United States corporate states jurisdictions under the colorable and de facto authority of the United States Corporation Company, which is under counterfeit, imposing or posing as a country, and this is part of the deception and effectively initiated after the dubious closing of the Freedmen's Bureau, which took place in the year 1868 AD. And of course, to culminate or to regulate or administer the cribbed or what you call the hypothecated estates of the Asiatic Africans who under Unum Sanctum are under the attack of Dum Diversas Romanus Pontifex Intercatera Divina, the Secret Treaty of Verona, and the Sister-Q Act, ETC, the Sister-Q Act of 1666, is regulated under what they have designed as a field marshal action of military operations, ens legis, referred to as the 14th Amendment to the American Constitution, i.e., must be very clear that it is the Constitution of the United States of America, constructed under the coup of 1871 and distinguished from the original agreement of treaty, which is the Constitution for the United States of America, which is derived from Muslim law and has been expressed by the CEO of the corporation, President Barack Obama, when he went to Egypt and exposed that the American Constitution is derived from Muslim law. He's actually making reference to the original Constitution before the corruption and the overthrow via the secret coup of 1871 for those Masons and scholars who recognized what he was actually saying, as well as reflected with the fact that when he exposed that information before representatives of nations, etc., and other organizations, etc., that Michelle went to the Alhambra, the last stronghold of the Moors, in reference to Dum Diversas of 1452, and so she went to the Alhambra in Andalus, what you know as Spain, etc., and was received well by the people. These were signals sent to the Asiatics of the North Gate, who are the heirs to the world's largest estate, who don't know the truth of the law, the history, and the politics. However, for those in the secret societies and the Masonic orders around the world recognized exactly the signal that he had sent. And of course, we know corresponding with these activities around the world that the civilized world of nations have come together to begin to dismantle the operations of the human trafficking via the bondage instruments ens legis constructed under the 14th Amendment, which comprises what is known as the UST bonds. The UST bonds are the bondage or the private commercial paper instruments constructed for actualizing the human trafficking on the stock market, i.e., the food for the beast. So the U.S. Treasury bonds are actually ens legis food for the beast. And the civilized world has taken it upon themselves, much of it due to the fact of the injuries that are taking place on the planet and the corruption of everything from the institutions of higher learning to the monetary systems, to the food systems, to all educational systems, to the so-called religious systems, even to the ecology of the earth. The civilized nations of the world has taken the move to deduce the potency of the food source of the ens legis machinery which indeed is the U.S. T-bonds, what is known loosely as the Treasury bonds, which themselves embody all of the instruments created by Rome under unum sanctum and placed on the stock market, whereas the human bodies of the people have been constructed into artificial commercial entities, and this is why everything operates in commerce, etc. Not that commerce is not a natural process by men interchanging and trading with each other in honor. We're not referring to it from that perspective. We're referring to the impoverishment of humanity and the corruption on the planet in service to the bullets issued by the popes of Rome, etc., contrary to progress, but in fact emanating as destruction upon the earth against all humanity, etc., under unum sanctum. And so the civilized world are dispensing of those UST bonds and taking the counterfeit nature of them that represent pristine transfer instruments and are actually building infrastructure around the world with them, as in fact they have no true monetary value. They have what you would call bookkeeping value on value of the state transfers under administrative operations and guised as money. That must be comprehended. They are guised as money, but indeed are not. They're simply bookkeeping instruments on a massive scale for human trafficking, dealing with the energies of the estate and the resources of the humans on the planet by virtue of hypothecation or backed up by dumb diverses, etc. And so the civilized world knows the truth of the operations of these instruments, and because the United States Corporation Company and its operatives, who have been impostoring themselves as a country, of which they are not, etc., have used the machineries and the technologies of past ancient world, which would appear to many people today as being advanced when it's actually ancient technologies, and have held them back from the human family and have been benefiting from that advanced technology for themselves, and have set up a plan via Intercadera Divina to actually steal all the resources and genocide the people, etc. This has much of the motivation as to why the civilized world has come together in unity to deal with the matters of the Pontifex operations and the hegemony mission of Christendom for the salvation of humanity and the planet itself. And so the position that they have taken is to kill the food of the beast, because the beast must feed on humanity in order to live, i.e., it is en legis vampirism, and so therefore the owners of the en legis vampire system themselves are vampires. And this is also why in their secret societies they eat and devour babies. And that is fact, but it's in harmony with the harmonics of their de facto operations of the ens legis. The idea that they're operating on is that they deal with the presumption that they are stealing the energy or living off the energy of the victims of their unum sanctum operations. And this is where, in their secret societies, that they have set as a substitute for the original Asiatic principles of the illumination of the pineal gland, they have set forth a counterfeit order of Illuminati and have done on to call the dark side the rituals of eating human flesh and babies particularly to gain the energy of their nos before they manifest themselves, etc., with the premise that they would be gaining that energy and exercising that to maintain their power on the earth plane. This is the foundation of some of their operations on what you call the pseudo-Illuminati, distinguished from the original truth of Illuminati, which is the activation of the pineal gland, which is the philosophies of the ancient world of the Norse, of the ancient Asiatic African peoples of the world, i.e., the contamination of the divine operations of life itself and converting it actually to what you call a dark side negative. And so this also gives the people a misperception of what Illuminati actually means. Also, what it does, it blocks them out of development when they take on a negative perspective without examination of that which is presented to them informationally, etc. That is purposeful in order to keep the people or have them create mental bonds against themselves and thus give what is called mandate to the operations of unum sanctum, i.e., this is what is called dealing from a military perspective, schismata, whereas the common people know it as divide and conquer, and whereas the people themselves are implanted with the defense against the operatives of them diverses against the instrument or against the instrument of the very people themselves, i.e., they have put the defense of the system into the victim. Now, lack of knowledge of the real history or even the Norse principles from which the God principles were derived that is used in all of the major religions, the people who don't know the history and the jurisprudence principles connected together have a tendency to keep looking at things from different thoughts or view based on the fact that they have different organizations, not knowing that all of your major organizations have the same fundamental Gnostic knowledge, but what they do, they contaminate it and put it in what is called dogmatic venues to create what you call different belief systems, and that is proffered amongst the masses, i.e., as a social solace systems, and giving the illusions amongst the masses that they have arrived to the divine knowledge, i.e., religion, when in fact the masses have never been given religion, they have dogma. And this is back to the issue of the counterfeit of all things under the demon system, which in the corporate United States jurisdiction would be known as the democracy order in reference to the coup of 1871. Now, so the 14th Amendment de facto ens legis operations is a social engineering program that was created and adopted by European colonial occupiers of North America and of the Western Hemisphere, and they were construed for nom de guerre. Nom de guerre is for war operations, chattel operations, and administrations of stateless persons, which is Aboriginals, Moors, and it created a legal yet not lawful courts entity of persons whom the Europeans subjugated, defeated, or conquered, and subsequently held to what is known as a civil liter mortuus status at North America. And so the 14th Amendment is also politically used for and adopted to the bureaucratic dealings with their bottomry instruments, which is reference to those private commercial instruments, etc., the birth certificates, etc., marriage certificates, all of which are bonds. And these bonds are being used by the operatives of the corporate states, which are subject, what you call, they would be franchisees of the United States Corporation Company, which must be distinguished from a country. It's not a country, it's a business. Now, consequently, in place to support the corporate states' birth certificates, marriage certificates, original manufacturers, titles of origin, etc., which were constructed, traded, and administered for institutionalized peonage and forced servitude. Now, these bottomry instruments are designed and misrepresented to regulate, quote-unquote, trust law and to escheat, that's E-S-C-H-E-A-T, escheat operations. This is whereas all the mortgage constructs, etc., and the loan systems set forth by the barrister deputy knights of England via the United States Corporation Company through their de facto legislation is the operations of the economic systems that are used at North America and falsely referred to as money. Now, those operations are artfully guised and presented as fungible instruments. Fungible instruments, which means what money is a fungible instrument, which means it is tangible. It has value, i.e. like gold. Like, say, for instance, if when you're looking at history, if you look off the coast of Georgia, many of the areas of North America, say not too far off the coast, where you have the shelves of the sea where it drops off, etc. If the people really understood, they could find many ships over the years, over the centuries, that are at the bottom of the ocean that have gold and jewels and precious artifacts all over the oceans, etc. Fungible means that any gold that was left or that sunk in any of those ships or that have been buried in any of the mounds that our forefathers built up and down the Red River or the Nile, which you call the Mississippi, etc., that would be fungible, for it can be traded around the world as valuable no matter how long it's been under the water or under the ground. And the water does not make it just lose its value. That's called fungibility. And so the money is fungible. And so the bottomry instruments that they have created are not fungible, for they are paper fictions created with artificial debt and artificial value, etc., yet they are presented as being fungible instruments. And this is comprised, or this is what is comprised in law and referred to in law as private commercial paper instruments, which also is referred to as fiat or Federal Reserve notes, which are not money. That must be made clear to everyone. You must measure all of these instruments by their fungibility. Also have a knowledge when fungible instruments are presented fungible, when in fact they are not. So if one does not know the history and does not know the truth of the politics, one can get confused when instruments are presented as being fungible, and this is where it gets gray, and people have a misconception of the administrations of operations of the United States Corporation Company and its franchise corporate operatives known as the states of legislation, etc., distinguished from state republics or state commonwealth under Constitution law, etc., distinguished from the coup operations under the operations of the democracy order set forth secretly in 1871 in order for the Romans to abrogate their obligations to the treaty, which is the supreme law of the land, which Obama mentioned when he went to Egypt, or what you know as Egypt, and went into Article 11 of the Treaty of Tripoli, etc., sending the Masonic signal across the world in reference to these things, which are in fact the truth of the history and the so-called debt obligations. At the same time, being in a somewhat compromised position, being CEO of the corporate entity under the Jesuit order known as the United States Corporation Company, doing business at North America, to be distinguished from the land and the people, which is Morocco, i.e. the Great Masonic Secret, sometimes referred to as, quote-unquote, the Great Seal. Now, when looking at these things, we must remember that the bottomry instruments are designed and misrepresented to regulate trust law and escheat operations, and are artfully guised and presented as fungible instruments distinguished from the money and traded on the stock market. Now, these operations are often misaligned with the fad word racism and placed under the diverting and connotatively applied verbiage slavery. Now, much of the franchise instructive symboliography and many of the linguistic, grammatical, and social, economic, and political operations serve to facilitate the financial hereditaments and political issues involving human trafficking, quote unquote, via commerce and trade. And the same are rooted therein. So think the Cestui Act of 1666 AD. Now, the multifarious distortions associated with the hidden Cestui Trust created and undisclosed by the administrators thereof, being the European feudal law beneficiaries, are tied to and related to their scrutinized or securitized bonds and stocks. Now, these and other fraud-based pseudo-fungibles and the associate matters concerning the creating of and deliberately shading vague and gray legal areas involve jurisdiction, descendability, and other vital or misrepresented or implied instruments of a trust or estate nature. Now, one identifiable process used to subjugate the living sentient beings is imposed by deeming living persons or living people as quote-unquote corporate persons. This refers to part of the function of the 14th Amendment as legis operations, etc. And so thus comprising the living sentient being and by legal colorable processes conjoining the living to the occupier's orifices, corporate entities, and these processes and procedures being feudal in nature and character are regulated by and supported by colorable legislation, by deceptions, by misrepresentations, and by frauds via the spurious 14th Amendment. Now, conversely, serious clarifications must be made, guided by critical thinking, when one addresses any matters involving these complex ens legis and fungible instruments and issues. Primal focus must be placed upon the damaging and injurious ramifications associated with them. And the same must be critically deciphered with the contemplating analyzers making clear distinctions of or between the variables and the aspects of their functions. The effect and the purpose in such matters, in such subjects and things. And particular emphasis should be definitely placed upon that which must be and should be classified as private versus those issues, things, or subjects which are at variance to and designated as public. Now, these important variables connected to the instruments and policies cannot be overemphasized, as they are primal to the core and to the potent components at and of the social, economic, and political heart of the occupier's bureaucratized forced servitude operations and of the administrations thereof. And such colorable ens legis veilings or veiling is deemed for serving the spurious and diverted interest of service to the European colonial inquisition doctrine of discovery operations as criminally initiated and functioning at North America. So in the context of these things, think colonialism, exploitation, piracy, arbitrary, peonage, human trafficking, genocide, denationalization, and birthright thefts. So we're going to take a break here on Moabite Oasis, High Frequency Radio. Bidding you a good day. So come back with some questions if you have them. We'll touch on some of these issues dealing with the unum sanctum operations, etc. High Frequency Radio, you all. Let's take a break.
You're listening to High Frequency Radio Network. Connect with us at RadioHighFrequency.com. You're listening to Moabite Oasis with your host, Taj Tarik Bey. Exclusively on High Frequency Radio Network, the baddest radio network on the planet.
There is a widespread knowing in the collective consciousness, as if to regain memory after a long bout with amnesia, rediscovering the spiritual self and the soul's forgotten mission and purpose. It is about ascending and transitioning into higher conscious awareness of one's own selfness and divinity, not by earthly permission, but by divine cosmic birthright. Namaste. This has been a Meta Minute with Dr. Naila Bakari Gilliam of House of Reawakening Minds, where we are reawakening minds, one mind at a time. Are you awake yet?
In what way does the Court's observation that the Second Amendment codified a pre-existing fundamental right to bear arms affect your conclusion that the Second Amendment does not protect a fundamental right?
My conclusion in the Maloney case or in the U.S. Sanchez-Villar was based on precedents and the holding of precedents that the Second Circuit did not apply to the states.
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What's your understanding of the test or standard the Supreme Court has used to determine whether a right should be considered fundamental? I'm not asking a hypothetical here. I'm only asking about what the Supreme Court has said in the past on this question. I recall, for instance, the Court emphasizing that a right must be deeply rooted in our nation's history and tradition, that it is necessary to an Anglo-American regime of ordered liberty, or that it is an enduring American tradition. I think I've cited.
There's a direct relationship between having the businesses and being in prison. Go find see how many Asians you can find in American prisons. They ain't gonna be in there. But 51% of your prisoners will be black because blacks don't have any businesses and industries. There's a direct link. Blacks won't practice group economics. Blacks won't practice group politics. If you don't practice, you're setting yourself up. I told that 5-story building, you're setting yourself to get wiped out. Understand the nature of race, which is economics. If you build the first floor, it's economic. Build your businesses and your industries. Control business and industry, and put that pools in your money, and hold that money, and practice group economics with it. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 or 13 times what it leaves. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black folk got to learn how to practice group economics. Black Americans spend every penny they get outside their own community. Then you take the money and the wealth that you get from that first floor and go to the second floor. The second floor is politics. You then take that money on the first floor and you control your politics. Black folk must quit allowing people to tell them to go out and vote. Vote for what? Nobody's going to do anything for black folk in politics. Politics is controlled by money, major corporations who got the money. That's what controls politics. If you have no money, you have no say-so, you have no benefits coming. So you take your money and you control, and you take your money from the first floor, you buy every politician on the second floor. And then the politician you can't buy, you rent or lease them to get what you need. Then once you get the second floor under control with the politician, with your money, then you go to the third floor. The third floor is the police department and the court system. You take your money from the first floor and your politics on the second floor, and you control the court system and the police departments. Then the fourth floor then is media. You then take the money that you generate off the first floor from business and industries, and you go after radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, and cable systems, so that you can now inform and communicate with your own people. Right now, black folk own and control less than 35,000% of the media in the United States. Out of 12,000 radio stations, black folk own about 75, 80. That's all. You own no cable systems. You don't have a daily newspaper. You have nothing of importance. You got about one black TV station. And so you can't communicate with your people. You can't inform your people. You can't do anything. You can have Rush Limbaugh and all the rest of the guys talking about racism all day long and bad-mouthing you, and O'Reilly. They can call black folk all kind of names all day long. What are you going to do? You can't respond. You can't communicate with your own people because you don't have an economic base. 51% of all the prisoners in the United States are black people. You only make up 12% of the population. That's no accident. It's because you don't control the economics and the politics. And they're going to go after the weakest people they can get their hands on to incarcerate them. That's the black folk. And what are you going to do in response to them when they over-incarcerate you? You're going to go out and have a march, a demonstration. We're going to march. March for what? Who cares? Marches, they never changed anything.
You're listening to Mobile Oasis with your host, Taj Tarik Bey. Exclusively on High Frequency Radio Network, the baddest radio network on the planet.
Islam Also, keep in mind the relationship to the 14th Amendment political operations in its relationship to the Unum Sanctum and Doctrine of Discovery operations against the occupied American peoples of the land. It must be always recognized that one of the symboliographical methods by which they have been hiding history is by them adopting the identity of the people of the land by calling themselves Americans, which they are not, and then calling the country America, which it is not, and then mixing those what you would call counterfeit statements with any expression in analyzing the operations of Unum Sanctum and the Doctrine of Discovery. And this serves the purpose that when people begin to find out some of the real history, that they will interject some of the symboliographical structures that are set forth in connotative operations to make their arguments incompetent or what you would call non-effective in law, and actually stepping back into the operations of the spurious, fungible instruments and legacy of the 14th Amendment. And that was done also to reinvigorate or rejuvenate the Unum Sanctum, and that's called also the Trading with the Enemy Act, which is a feudal law act constructed to reinvigorate and rejuvenate the powers, the psyche, and the political operations of Unum Sanctum Doctrine of Discovery against the occupied American natural peoples of the land. And very often, many of the Asiatics or the true people of the land get confused because they're thinking in their mind when the word American is used that they're talking about the Europeans, when in fact they're not. They're talking about themselves. The Europeans are the occupiers. The Americans are under occupation. And this is one of the methods by which they have done what you would call connotative linguistics to shield themselves or to hide themselves in full view, i.e. while carrying out the discovery of Doctrine of Discovery operations right in the face of the people. And then the people who are under attack are calling them Americans, which demonstrates a transfer of sovereignty, which actually belongs to the true beneficiaries of the estate, i.e. the Moors, Asiatics of the land, who are often mislabeled as Negroes, Indians, Latinos, etc., who are actually the true Americans under occupation of the feudal law operatives via the Unum Sanctum and enforced in contemporary times, again, under the Trading with the Enemy Act. So keep that in mind, too, when looking at the 14th Amendment and the other aspects of the Doctrine of Discovery, which would include Unum Sanctum, Dum Diversus, Romanus Pontifex, Interpretera Divina, Secret Treaty of Verona, and the Sesquiu Act of 1666. Those things, and keep in mind, those persons who are in positions of authority, one of the major reasons why it's necessary for them to belong to secret societies in different Masonic orders, and also whether Illuminati and Skull and Bones, Knights Templar, Knights of Columbus, Kyclos, Ku Klux Klan, Union Guard, Georgia American Revolution, etc., because persons who are in positions of authority or who are administrating over the occupation of the estate must be aware of the real history. This is also why they must take death oaths, because if the masses knew these things, the masses would begin a process in their consciousness of sending out energy that would be counter to the operations of Unum Sanctum, and logically it would cause the administrations of this estate to be quite difficult, and of course you would have what you call open conflict or revolutions, etc. So it's necessary from a political perspective for the Europeans to falsely refer to themselves as the Americans so that they can lay claim upon the trust and the estate. this is also why they set up, when they did the hypothecation, they set up a joint stock trust and then disallowed any other legal persons to do the same. This has much to do with the operations of the issues of the function politically of the ens legis instruments under the 14th Amendment, and why they're disguised as fungible when in fact they are indeed not. And of course, what is happening in the world today is that they have reached their apex, or what you call their life of foolery, and of course it's falling apart. So it's important for people to know the history to understand why the economics are what they are today, and why you also have the embargo or the blockade that's taking place on the West Coast with all the ports and all the ships out there, et cetera, and including on the East Coast, and why some of your major stores all around the country of North America and Canaan land, both of which have the same pseudo-national number for those who know international law. Canada and United States Corporation Company, imposters as nations, have the same number. And for those of you who know that, would recognize why that would not be understood by most people who misconceive what real nations are, distinguished from these private corporations, which are actually feudal operations of the takeover. So anyway, it's important to be aware of that to understand why they're having problems now. And so you'll understand why all the Target stores in Canada closed down, and why you have a lot of your major stores or what you call retail outlets, ship-to-shelf type construct, which is the business model, why they're shutting down over roughly around 7,000, we're talking about even this year, and moving ahead, et cetera. And that is due to the fact that the civilized world, as we had said, are dismantling the bondage of humanity that are embodied via the human trafficking instruments called U.S. T-bonds, et cetera. And therefore, the rest of the world is not accepting those T-bonds, or what is known as the U.S. petrodollar on another level, in trade, et cetera, because of the human trafficking instruments, et cetera. And, of course, they must unite in order to protect themselves, because individually they can't do it and get away, because they will enforce the unum sanctum, that is murder, genocide, and infiltration and overthrow, et cetera, in order to maintain the pseudo, or what you call the colorable appearance of integrity of those, i.e., misrepresented fungible instruments, in order to feed the beast. And so this is also why you see different nations of the earth dumping those T-bonds and using them for infrastructure, et cetera, which logically puts Rome in a position of having to accept them or cover them to maintain the appearance of fraud, because if they don't, they would be dismantling their own system. And so they're caught in like a catch-22 situation. And logically, it's in the interest of the Asiatics of North America to understand the real political operations, so that they can prepare their families and get in order to whatever degree they can to start preserving their birthright, so they can survive this area or this time of corrupted and very, trying transition that will and must take place. And so keep in mind, the nature of the politics is under unum sanctum, and dum diversus, Romanus Pontifex, Inter Cetera Divina, the Secret Treaty of Verona, the Cestui Act of 1666, and collectively, those particular bulls are referred to as the doctrine of discovery. Are there any people on the board, good brother?
Yes, there is. Before I let somebody come in, we do have a question. They're going to know whether or not you are doing your class tonight in Delaware.
Someone's asking a question about what in Delaware?
Your class, you have a class that you do, I think you're having a class tonight in Delaware?
Yeah, Dr. Naila, who also comes on High Frequency Radio. I do a class every other Friday at a RAM Center at 602 Vandiver in Wilmington, Delaware, on Friday from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay, we have some callers on the line. The call-in number, everyone, is 424-222-5258. You're listening to the hottest radio network on the planet, High Frequency Radio. First caller, I'm going to let in 313-8640. Please, Brother Jason.
Greetings.
All right, Taj. I appreciate you honoring me, and it's an honor to be talking with you, man. And Yusuf, man, you know what? I want to say something to Yusuf, man. You are a jewel, and for a person like me that have never ever, my parents, they didn't know this information. I don't even think my grandparents, and I'm 43 years old, knew about any of this kind of information. And I tell you what, but to go on to ask Taj a question, I have two questions. One is how do a man like me, I have a family, we got to eat, they're looking for dad to bring the bread home and all of that stuff. How do one go about trying to get out of the system of working and providing for myself? And the second question is can
one question at a time. Save the next question. Let's answer the first one.
Okay.
What are you talking about getting out of working? What do you put that in context?
No. I'm gonna put it in context. I tell you, you working a 9 to 5, or like me, I'm on the road. I'm a truck driver.
Yeah.
And it's starting to seem unnatural to me to be away from my family.
It is, yes.
And I know that it takes study and it takes work. No, it's not. Please don't misinterpret me wanting to get out of work, because in terms of using your mind and your physical labor, but for your own benefit and your family benefit, right, not for another man's benefit. Not, like I said, I've never heard this information.
Yeah, good. I understand, because work is a joy to man. Now, this is the point. If you understand the system, now, for those of you who are listening to High Frequency Radio, and those of you who have had the honor and the opportunity to listen to Paul Savage Ill and to Brother Yusuf Ill when he's expressing to you the distinction between the public and the private, these are part of the remedies, even though they may be limited. As any remedy that we would bring or present to you will be limited due to the fact that Rome still rules. However, easing the burden. But to ease the burden, you must know what's happening and that your estate has been commercialized, that you yourself, i.e., comprise the stock. And so we're dealing with hypothecation of humanity itself by the Popes of Rome. That's what unum sanctum actually is. Now, one of the things that above all, everything, to keep it simple, I would suggest to everybody, everything that you have, you should create a trust and estate and put everything in your trust, everything that you got, including the used bicycle tires that you don't want anymore. Anything that Rome, that you don't nail down, Rome automatically hypothecates. Automatically. Now, the refined details of that operation, some of it not totally refined, but in a synopsis, you will find in House Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, in session June the 5th of 1933. But understand those issues of the hypothecation actually are under unum sanctum dum diversus Romanus Pontifex inter Cetera Divina, the Secret Treaty of Verona, the Sister Q Act of 1666, which comprised the doctrine of discovery. And the Sister Q Act of 1666 is the basis upon which the 14th Amendment has its construct, in which they hypothecate the bodies of men and have what you call politicized and bureaucratized the human trafficking. Therefore, when you become conscious, keep this in mind, one of the functions of enforcing the Sister Q Act was the taking of the names, the nationality, and the religion from the Asiatics, or what they call the Saracens, which would actually convert into Moors or Muslims under the conquest of Unum Sanctum, etc., so that whatever you buy or sell in the name or the mark of the name of the European would automatically make it state property. This is one of the reasons why it is politically, not emotionally, necessary to nationalize, to be in proper person in order to be heritable in law, in order to even begin to have an argument in relationship to your status, to your estate. That would be expressed in history as what you might look at when you look at the Amistad case or the Dred Scott case, things of that nature, which deal with the status of the being in relationship to rights, liberties, capacities, and incapacities in relationship not only to rights, but a right of claim to any estate whatsoever. And this is where the operators at North America have been using to steal the wealth of the people, and that's distinctly expressed in House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session of June the 5th of 1933. So understand that goes back even to the coup of 1871, where they secretly converted the original republic into a feudal order known as democracy, and just consider 1913 with Woodrow Wilson as a countermeasure to Noble Drew Ali with the restoration of the estate and the true history and the Norse knowledge that was maintained amongst the priesthood and giving it to the common people of the land back to them, which would bring them back into the constitutional fold of government and in their proper person, and being able by law to claim their estate, being competent, etc. So the undermining of that was when they met off Jekyll Island with the representatives of the popes of Rome and of England, i.e. the 3 stars or the 3 bars, dealing with the sovereign claim of the 7 hills of Rome of Washington, D.C., in agreement with the dark priesthood. And this is represented when you see on the tags that they have on the cars in Washington, D.C., you see the 3 stars and the 2 bars beneath it. That represents the 3 sovereign states under Unum Sanctum, being the Vatican, Washington, the District of London, and Washington, D.C., to claim the estate of the Moors, etc., i.e., doctrine of discovery. The very tag is even expressing it. And so it is important that you preserve what you do have, because everything is hypothecated under their jurisdiction. This, again, has much to do why the nations of the earth are killing those T-bonds. And our people need to be aware of those politics. Now, in relationship to the fact of the ens legis and the fungible instruments that they have put on the stock market, i.e. the birth certificates, the marriage certificates, the original manufacturer's titles of origin, etc. This is why Brother Yusuf Gill is telling the people about making distinction between public and private, and be very clear on that while you transact. Because remember, we're not going to get totally out of this thing until Rome is out of power. And this is, again, why it's understandable, as the world is coming at them, why Pope Francis did the motu proprio and rescinded, or what you call ended, the Christian doctrine of discovery. With that signing of that treaty, December the 14th of this past year, because it involves Unum Sanctum Dum Diversus, Romanus Pontifex, Inter Patera Divina, the Secret Treaty of Verona, and the Sister Q Act. And so what he did, he charged all of the operatives under the doctrine of discovery new marching orders. That must be understood. But understood that this corruption has been heavily infiltrated or instituted within every institution that has been constructed under the United States Corporation Company So it is important, as Brother Paul Savage-Eel had said earlier, for us to all move in honor. Meanwhile, in your proper person, there's already law in place by which you are not to be taxed. I suggest study them and use them. Second question.
Well, I I'm thinking about the UCC. I'm wondering if used properly, is it a good tool to use?
You must use every tool possible to take. In other words, this is where we're at. Everything is commercialized because everything is based on human trafficking, not in nature, but in the fact of the unum sanctum operations. This must be comprehended, and we must be realistic about it. It is not the fact that it's moral or ethical. It's the fact that that's how things work. Therefore, if it's a method that brings remedy, use it, but study first so that you don't get trapped. Because remember, every time you make a move, they make a counter move. Also, as they're aware that people are becoming conscious, they're going to have people jumping through hoops. And then when you jump through hoops, they're going to create more hoops for you to jump through. However, you got to do what you got to do to try to survive these things as the transition is made. Are we clear?
And also, yes. Also, watch what hoops you jump through, I guess.
Repeat that last part.
No, I was saying, I guess, and also watch what hoops you actually jump through. Study the hoops before you jump through.
Exactly, but we must not confuse the jumping through the hoops as being correct. We must recognize that this part of the coercive operations, whereas they're putting brakes on rights that are unalienable. Because keep in mind, birthrights and substantive rights and your right to the truth of your estate and divine law is inalienable or unalienable, which means it cannot be sold nor transferred to another. And you know that commerce means trade, which is a contradiction. However, we must recognize that we've been compromised, and so therefore we must use commercial codes by necessity of operation, not in necessarily morally, because we know that we're compromised. You see? But it does not mean you dismiss them, because you got to be realistic of what's going on. Because they've taken the private divine rights of the human and put it in a public venue, which means they've taken it from its divine side and put it under unum sanctum. Whenever you hear the public, take it, equate it with unum sanctum.
And Taj, if I could comment, too briefly. By the way, that was a very excellent explanation of that. Because a lot of people listen to my show and they think that I'm endorsing the UCC. You know, it's not that I endorse the UCC. I like what Taj just said. It's how things are. I'm just talking to people matter-of-factly. Everything is operating off of commerce, and there's a public side. Everything is operating through commerce. You have this straw man. You have this, and people. I don't even like using the word straw man because it's really not a legal term per se. But it's in the public. Everything is a fiction. Everything is operating through some sort of artificial entity, and there's some sort of profit or gain, and everything is taxed. And you have all this world over there that you have to deal with, and everybody's been acclimated to that lifestyle, and everybody lives in that world. Unless you're going to be the kind of person I'd say that is going to move out into the woods and just totally extract yourself from the society, which I believe that you can do really effectively through a trust. When you learn how to put together a private trust and operate your business effectively through that. But that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a situation where, everything on planet Earth is operating through commerce. It just is.
Yes. In other words, and we have to change the energy because like Paul was saying, we have to go back to honor. In other words, we have to, with this, and this is why I opened up even with the Norse, because people also are it's going to be difficult for people, but they're going to have to get over themselves and rethink their concept of God too, because even that's a misunderstood paradigm. But it's very sensitive when you start telling the truth about how things are constructed, and people are reluctant to give up their pill that is really medicine and not knowing the distinction. And this is back to the point, as Brother Yusuf is saying, we must understand how things operate. We're not defending it. We're explaining things, meaning that we're all looking for remedy. And when you look at a jewel or even a rough stone coming out of the ground, when you make it a jewel so it can reflect the light of the ethers and show its beauty, it will have multifacets. And therefore, don't look at any stone from just one side, but study all the sides to understand the prism of light that shines through it. Therefore, we must know all aspects of history to know how we got to where we are, for it manifests as what we call the operations of rule, i.e., what you refer to as law. Therefore, law and history goes together. And it's not always what we like or what is fair or what is ethical or what is moral, but we must first look at things for what they actually are and then learn to navigate. And thus the principle that has been used over the years and centuries called the isonomy, or the compass and the square, or the navigator's tools or the carpenter's tools by which man guides his life. And this is the basis upon which character is built, and where you use such character to get to the highest that is in you in order to be honorable to men, that men might honor you. Thus, the principle of what is called the natural law, from which they derive somewhat the common law, from which is based in divine order, called honor thy mothers and thy fathers, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee, which is the basis of inheritances, etc., the estate or the land or your inheritances, which has been corrupted by the Popes of Rome through the bulls issued by the Popes of Rome being covered by unum sanctum.
Wow, I really appreciate your time there, man, and it's a lot to take in, but what I can hear in the background is you saying study as well. So don't quit my day job yet, because I got a lot of that to do.
And this is back to people should not get in the idea that we're talking different things, because they're different facets of the same jewel.
I see. Well, I'm gonna yield the floor. I really appreciate it.
All right, good brother.
All right, thank you.
All right, good brother.
All right, next we got area code 213-4642. You're on High Frequency Radio. Got a question or comment? Area code 213.
Yes, honors. Here you go. Hello?
Yeah, you're on the air, brother.
Hello, good brother.
Okay, there we go. All right. First off, Taj, I want to thank you. You talked a long time ago on the Moore-Kush Brothers show when they had that going on. You mentioned something to read called The Black Pope. It's taken me about 3 years to read that, but I finally finished it. And the clarity that has come from that is ridiculous. It's like every day there's something new that pops up and just validates everything you were saying, everything Yusuf is saying. But just to be real quick, we don't seem to understand, I think, how union laws work. That's the only thing that the powers that be recognize, and we know that, is you got to move in mass. If you're trying to move individually, it's not going to work. So somehow we need to figure out, how do union laws work?
All right.
And how can
now stop right there. Stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
Politically, when you're just talking on a basic commercial basis and you're talking union, you're talking about people that come together, usually who are subordinate workers under some franchisee jurisdiction of operations that deals with an aspect of the franchise operations under the United States Corporation Company Operative, which is a faction of the Trinity of the Unum Sanctum operations. But in a greater political power move, the union sanction universally is called nationhood or nationality. This is where you go, where you talk about law of nations. And so the power that the people keep seeking is the power that was taken from them via the denationalization process under unum sanctum. This is why we always tell people to declare their nationality, but many people keep taking it as a philosophy. It is not a philosophy. It's an estate issue and a bloodline issue and an issue of heritability. That's why it's important for people to know their history so they can stop looking at it as a philosophy or a school of thought. It's the actual politics. You see the point?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And instead of me just going in, I'm going to just throw these points out. So you say that. So we have what they say, the founding fathers. No one really looks into that. Founding fathers, you know, when someone starts something, if it's theirs or whatever, they call them founders, and that's it.
Let's hold right there before we go further. Hold right there, and let's talk and show how people misunderstand these things that are obviously in their faces.
Right.
As an example, when the people are talking about the founding fathers, right? Most of the people think them as Christians, don't they? They're not. Most of the people don't know their minister plenipotentiary titles, do they?
That's right.
And when they make reference to the so-called founding fathers, they make references from a totally disconnected perspective without a knowledge that they were ministers plenipotentiary under the Moorish Empire, and that they were indeed not Christians, but in fact were deists.
Deists, right.
This is why all of them have Korans, because they're dealing with the real history of administering over Morocco, which is under occupation. This is why the great Masonic secret is the Moors themselves and must be maintained in secret, for they are the heirs to the world's largest estate. That's why all persons in political power must be Masons and wear a Moorish fez and dress it in jewels, but they must tie the tassel down because they are not the sovereign. The sovereign has been overthrown. They think that they're Negroes, blacks, and coloreds and Christians, all of which they're not, but it makes them non-descendable, doesn't it?
That's correct. So now,
Now, wait a minute, because remember, because the question gives opportunity for many of the listeners of high frequency to understand why some things are said to them that they may not understand or comprehend its purpose or function at the moment. And as an example, just like that, if you deal with just with an opening principle of the preamble to the treaty of peace and friendship, when Obama mentioned when he went to Egypt, one must understand why did he go through the trouble to be saying what he said? What message was he sending to the heirs of the estate, knowing that they don't know the history, that they're dealing with this stuff emotionally, they're dealing with ideas of their schools of thought, but not really knowing the history. And then many of them go into the history and they think they can still use the brands and claim the estate, which cannot happen. So let's look at if you just consider just the entry to the preamble of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship superseding the adoption of the American Constitution, and thus we're dealing with the era of time. Timeline is important. 1786, 1787, and this takes place before the ordinance of 1787 determining the structure of government, then the adoption of the Constitution for the government of the United States of North America. Now, just consider the entry to the preamble. To all persons to whom these presents shall come or be made known, whereas the United States of America Congress assembled by their commission bearing the date 12th day of May 1784 thought proper to constitute John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson their ministers plenipotentiary, giving to them or a majority of them full powers to confer, treat, and negotiate with the ambassador, minister, or commissioner of His Majesty the Emperor of Morocco concerning a treaty of amity and commerce, to make and receive propositions for such treaty, and to conclude and sign the same, transmitting to the United States and Congress assembled for their ratification. Now, logically, if people don't know their history, they disconnect from their bloodline and therefore are not descendable. You see the point?
Yes.
And so they don't know that these so-called founders and fathers are actually just ministers plenipotentiary, and the fathering is only of the transfer of the treaty brought into the constitutional fold of government, but not of the nation, because the nation is Morocco. You see the point?
Yes.
So if people don't know the history, they don't make that connection. They keep thinking the land and the country, don't they?
Yes.
Now you see why Jefferson, like you see a lot of congressmen, et cetera, still take oaths on Jefferson's Bible, Quran, et cetera, and people talk about it, but they don't really still understand the connection.
Yeah, it's obvious.
That's why Obama had to go to his Qutb and expose that the American Constitution is derived from Muslim law, and why Michelle sent the signal to the matrons of all secret orders, and she went to the Alhambra. So that's in reference of dumb diverses, isn't it? So they're sending signals, you see the point? But unless people know law and history, they keep disconnecting. You see the problem?
Yes. To add on to that, it might be layman's terms, but so you have these ministers who set up a union, and it's a system of checks and balances. That's commercial all the way. The whole system from the get-jump is commerce immediately, and all they're concerned about is national security. And we know that securities, that's money. So they're mobbing for their money.
So what occurs? So why are we talking what we're talking? This is what we're talking. If the people become conscious, their thoughts will change. And when their thought changes, they will get back to the proper order. And the proper order is the honor. And when they get back to the honor, they make claim by action, by nature, to their estate. In other words, until their minds changes, the conditions won't change. And people are looking to get their hands on money, and they're not allowed to handle money. It's dealing with estate. You see? That's why Brother Yusuf keep telling people they're dealing with trust. They're administering a trust. You see the point?
Absolutely.
And so people keep saying they're administering money. They're not administering money. As soon as they say that, they're lying and they're incompetent.
Right. Right. And all the more reason to learn to, okay, so you got everyone, we know society is based off of Rome and Greek and all like that, okay, and then we have all these other people we know that they do deep studies of Egyptology. We also know that they have a particular society or group of people who are experts at money. So you have law, you have, well, let's say Cleopatra and Caesar. They got together. When they got together, that was a contract. That married the ultimate control that Rome had via law with the ultimate control Egypt had via spirituality. Those two married along with the Jesuits, and they're expert with money. That's it right there. And they've been mobbing on this for thousands of years.
You got to look like this. Let's back up. Mm-hmm. This is what people have really got to clear in their heads. And this is with all due respect. They got to stop accrediting Rome with things that did not originate with Rome. The moon or money is based on the four crescent of the moon, ETC, which would be demonstrated as what you call a circle with the quarters in it, with the four quarters, which also represents the mundane earth, i.e. symbolically. Now, philosophically and metaphysically, it represents what is called the master seal. In architecture, it represents the glyph of the earth. Now, each of the quarters of that circle or pie represents a quarter or quarter crescent. And the four quarters of the crescent represent the whole or the sun. And so you have 4 quarter moons. This is why your quarters to the Yakum thaler or the coin of the gold and its weight and measured would be recognized as equal by grams and measurements, i.e. the 4 quarters of silver, i.e. which is the alchemical energy of the moon, which governs the waters, the tides, and the ankh of government, or the womb of woman, or the matriarchy principle of government on the earth. Thus, the economy of life on the earth, and so therefore the energy of the moon and the earth, i.e. moon energy generating the economy on earth. That's money, and not the Roman goddess Moneta, as they tell you. Is dealing with Kabbalistic principles. And therefore, the money is gold and silver according to the cosmological nature of the philosophies of the Norse, of the people of the earth, i.e. This is also why more is also used with the movement of waters and shipping, i.e. that's why they call where they dock ships, more, under the ancient Moabites who are navigating the earth under the compass and the square, or the rudder and the sextant. All of this relates back to ourselves. We must recognize that even when you're talking about the being born again, which the Europeans refer to as the Renaissance, is demonstrative of when the Moors went into Europe to the 16th century, bringing the European hybrids out of the Dark Ages into the modern light. And so when you're dealing with money, you're talking about Asiatic African culture, not Roman culture. When you're talking about the jurisprudence, which is the science that deals with positive law, based on the cosmic knowledge of the universe, you're still dealing with Asiatic African culture. This is is why all your European Renaissance men must be mothers and sons of the world, or what they call Masons. You see, that's still your more science. That's still the science of Africa.
Right. That's understood. I say what I was saying to just. I don't know, your points don't need validation, but I guess in my head, I'm just validating your point, understanding that the Popes of Rome concept, that they took something from somewhere else and was able to master it. But let me just say this last thing, and I'm going to yield the floor. Based on what you're saying and based on understanding that things go beyond that to the Asiatic, I asked Yusef this before, and I'm going to ask you, does it seem like we screwing ourselves over when we put that Anno Domini date on stuff? Because it seemed like you can do the most beautiful documents or whatever you want, but as soon as you submit it to them and you had that 2015 on there, it seemed like you've automatically given them jurisdiction by acknowledging.
This is what it is. If anybody had the opportunity to listen to Paul Savage's show earlier, the issue, even when bringing them into the constitutional fold of government with the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, it is called what you would call dealing with the issue of the reciprocity and bringing them into constitutional rule of order, including the Renaissance. It is what you would call, some people would look at as giving some credence or paying some of what is called the karmic debt. It is not a negative. It's balancing things out.
Yeah, they're saying that, though. Do you think that any of that is just duplicity? Because we know the Jesuits are the masters of duplicity, and they're going to say whatever they need to say to go along, to get along, review the situation, take part, take over. So, is it really real, or do you think it's just duplicity? Because they've been mobbing like this, for forever. So, is it real?
The very fact that we're even going through this is part of the evolution of us coming out of the grave. When people are buried, look at it from a metaphysical perspective. You bury something, you throw dirt on it, etc. When it comes out of the grave, or that which appears to be dead but is actually living, logically, as it comes up out of the grave, it's going to have dirt and soil on it and must be cleansed later. Nevertheless, look at the same dynamics in what you would call more the physical and the political operations of our people today, clearing their heads out of not understanding the difference between dogma and religion, not understanding the difference between fiat and money, not understanding the difference between de facto and de jure, not understanding the difference between the republic and the feudal democracy. All of these things must be cleared. But the fact that the people are even on the path today lets you know that the transition is being made, and that is the point. And as that energy moves, it changes the vibration. And it's actually the thought processes and the vibration that changes things, not actually the concrete things that people are immediately looking for, thinking they're going to get their hands on a bottomless pit of financial benefit.
Right on. Honest, I appreciate it. I yield the floor. Thank you very much.
All right, brother. Peace.
Peace.
All right. Let's bring in 856-6509. You're on High Frequency Radio. 856-6509. You have a question or comment?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3. What I'd like to know is it possible to meet up with Brother Taj at all? Can you hear me? Hello?
Repeat.
Hello, can you repeat? Hello?
You're like breaking away. Can you...
Yeah, I'm changing speakers now because I realize you can't hear me. I wonder if it's possible to meet up with Brother Taj at all.
You're like breaking. I can't hear clearly what you're saying.
What he said, He said that he was wondering if it was possible.
Taj at all.
He was wondering, is it possible to meet up with you at all?
Yes, when we come out to the venues. Yes, I'll be at this Friday. Logically, tomorrow I'll be at 602 Van Dever in Wilmington, Delaware territory.
Will you be in the Philadelphia territory?
On Saturday, this Saturday, from 12. We'll probably be earlier because we're doing the trek also with Brother Settenraw, etc. So at the York Apartments every other Saturday, that's right off Broad, near Olney, etc. At the York Apartments, which you already know, and that's from 12 to 4.
Okay, I'm across the river in Camden. That's why I understand. I met a few people who know you or that kind of thing, or knew you. You know, I don't want to drop their name because I didn't talk to them about nothing. But I wanted to know.
A lot of times when I'm in Camden, when I get in the area, I'll be meeting with Truth Ali, etc., who's a very adept brother who's doing a lot of good work for the people and helping the people on multiple areas. And once in a while, I'll go to some of his classes and etc. And if you know him, you can contact him. He'll let you know when we get together sometimes.
No, I don't know him. I know a couple of people. Well, anyway, I don't know him. But you're telling me that Aldney and Broad is the closest thing that you do on a regular?
Yeah, it's old. It's York House Apartments, and it's near Olney. Before you get to Olney, which is the transportation center on Broad Street in Philadelphia, and it's in the same block just before Einstein Hospital. Can't be missed.
Okay. I was listening to what you had said about the Freedmen's Bureau. I read something about a brother who was there at the time. I think it was one of them brothers from over in Jersey. That was the place there where they have the WKYY studio. That's where that's located now. With
the brothers who gave me that information.
How's that? Was the Freedmen's Bureau over where right downtown in Philadelphia?
Well, yes, they had it. Basically, it's an order that was actually set in different territories. But what the Freedmen's Bureau was to do was to get back the names, the nationality, and some of the history, and also put the people in proper person, give them 40 acres and a mule, and that deals with the 3630 parallel issue, etc. And a lot of what was supposed to be done in the Freedmen's Bureau in during 1865 to 1868 is done today through the whole Finding National Movement, i.e., or what Drew Ali set up, the Freedmen's Bureau, and also put the people in proper person, give them 40 acres and a mule, and that deals with the 3630 parallel issue, etc. And a lot of what was supposed to be done in the Freedmen's Bureau in during 1865 to 1868 is done today through the whole Finding National Movement, i.e., or what Drew Ali set up, with the Moorish Divine and National Movement and the Canaanite Temple in 1913 in that same era.
Okay. There was something.
You got a lot of feedback in the back. That's distorting.
That's not my feedback. I don't know where that's coming from. That don't have nothing to do with me.
Oh, all right. Go ahead.
So there was a Freedmen's Bureau in downtown Philly at one time, right?
Yes.
Okay. You know any other way to? You say a brother named Drew Ali is in Camden, right?
No, Drew Ali. You might hear referred to as Noble Drew Ali set up Old Canaanite Temple in 1913 to restore the estate to the heirs of the estate, and that became known as the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Science Temple of America, which in fact embodies a lot of the social political estate issues that were supposed to be carried out with the Freedmen's Bureau in 1865 to 1868 before they shut it down and set up the ENS LEGIS, known as the Man of Straw, or the dead corpse, and registered in corporate state of Delaware as Christian property to support the Christian hegemony, which you know as the 14th Amendment, which is the problem we're dealing with now and the theft of our estate.
Mm-hmm. I recall in 2008 when Obama took office, he said he was going to, for the sake of the debt that the country was in or something, when they were threatening to close it, shut it down for money or something, that he was going to invoke the Fourth.
That's what he's talking about. That's why he went to Egypt and exposed that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law, because he knows that he can't do it. The people must do it.
Oh, shut it. I get you. As far as the people must do something
people being governed under the democracy order have forgot that they themselves are the government, and that they themselves are being trafficked, and they themselves are the fungible instruments misrepresented as the money. That's why their signature is used, because they're the heirs to the estate.
Have you ever heard of something about
the system? He's exposing the system to the limit that he can without getting shot. You get the point?
Oh, I get that point right away. That point don't slip past me. But I didn't realize that he went to Egypt. I didn't know anything about that. I heard he had come to Camden just a few weeks back.
Oh yeah, because the theft took place in this area called Shackamaxon, which is really the name of this area that you call Camden, Philadelphia, etc. This is where they took the birthright. That's why they do the Mummers Parade in Philadelphia, which is actually a symbolic fall of the Moors.
Oh, that's what that is.
That's why they assemble at 6th and Moore Street.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just came up this way and found stuff like Moorestown and different places like that, and went to those places and found there was a lot of Moors living there.
Yeah, if you pay attention, City Hall in Philadelphia is actually designed like a mosque.
Yes, I was just there today. Up above it, they got two people of Moorish descent.
You got Billy Penn. You got Billy Penn standing 23.5 degrees east by northeast, facing the Grand Masonic Lodge and number 1 Broad Street, and that's where the Lumber Parade ends. And you'll find that the cornerstone next you go there is not on the building, but is in a grave pit in the dark north, just beneath the parapet, with a brass rail. And all of that's symbolic. Right. Then you see the Zodiac Law of the Moors right in the center of the courtyard.
Oh, they didn't take that away when they remodeled it lately.
No, they covered it up and painted it, but because the brass lines are underneath it, they don't show all the grid lines that go across the planet. So they paint it over it and do it in what you call a very juvenile formulation, but it's still there in the center of the courtyard with the 4 gates, 1 to the north, 1 to the south, 1 to the east, 1 to the west.
And I was saying above those 4 gates, above the 4 entrances into the city hall, about 50 feet are 2 Moorish people in loincloths. a woman and a man.
Mm-hmm. That
You familiar
represents
with
Elohim. That also represents the energy of the Norse, which I talked to you earlier. And also keep in mind, Kabbalistically, it's referred to as the secret of the word, sometimes called Ma-Ra.
M-A-R-A?
M-A-A-A-A-R-A-A-A, Ma-Ra. And they chant that in secret societies to connect to the Kundalini energy.
Okay. The way you had said Nos, N-O-U-S, is that the same as G?
Yes. That's
we will find it periodically as G-N-O-U-S?
The activation of intelligence.
We will find it periodically as G-N-O-U-S?
You got that right.
Okay, beautiful. One other thing. You say I can see you Saturday at this York apartment.
Yes.
I'll be there. Beautiful.
All right.
One other thing was, if you don't mind, the Cooley law.
Oh, hold on before you ask your last question. Let me make an announcement. Hey, everyone, all the listening audience, we got about 1 minute and 37 seconds left on the stream. Taj, if you want to go over an hour, there are a lot of people in queue. There are some people in queue. I don't know if you want to end the show, if you want to go over a little bit. If you want to go over a little bit, you can.
Well, it's up to you, you know, and you can pick up from there for what you already know, because you already know the stuff blends together, because they need to understand why things are in commerce and why you keep telling them that so that they can stop looking at it as a different philosophy.
Right.
Okay, I'm off.
Right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, we can go over. I just wanted to let everybody know you got about 60 seconds left on the stream. If you want to call in and continue to listen, call in. The number to call in is 424-222-5250. We have another caller calling in from Florida, 863-4617. You're on High Frequency Radio.
Yes, greetings, my brothers. How y'all doing today?
Greetings, good brother.
Great, brother.
Yes. All right, my brothers. Greetings, peace, and love to the whole family over there. And Brother Taj, it's always good to hear from you again. This is Brother Ras Casa Bay calling in from Miami, Florida.
All right,
my brother. Peace, Hotep, shalom, my brother. I got a question for you, man. I'm gonna stay on you with the the thing we spoke about, which you actually just mentioned with the last caller about these Moorish communities that's down here. And I know you had mentioned to me about Philadelphia already. And remember, I was talking to you about the Girard College. That whole issue with Toussaint Louverture and that money that was taken from him to build that school. And I know you had mentioned that there was a lady that was actually in pursuit of that.
Oh, yeah. And still, it boils back down to what Paul is saying. What happens is our people get this information, and they mean well, and so it's not knocking them. But by them not having a broader sense of the history, they're not always aware that they're dealing with what you would call a hypothecated estate. And the heirs or the true beneficiaries of the estate are the Moors of North America. And what happens, they get the information, start talking Afrocentricity, and think they can claim the estate. Well, they can claim the history, but in law, they're not descendable to in the honor of their mothers and fathers, because it is what it is. It's not what they want it to be. You see the point?
Exactly, and that's why they need to actually do the studying to see exactly why, because remember I mentioned to you, Hidden Colors, which I feel like is a great documentary that exposed a lot of that history and the whole Moorish melanated history period, and they need to find out why was Toussaint linking up with Philadelphia. What was that about? What was that about?
Even why he set up the Republic, and then why they took him to England to kill him. Because
France. He actually died in France. I think at one of Napoleon's dungeons. But you're exactly right, because the more I study that history, and I'm really a historian guy, and I really feel like if people really want to know what's going on with as far as North America and Caribbean, that whole Columbus thing, you got to really check out the Haitian Revolution, because that has a lot of insight.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's why they got to recognize that when you're dealing with the real operations of things, that even though they're looking at things in the contemporary prospect or perspective of territorial jurisdictions, that the real operations bleed through the lines of political jurisdiction across the planet, so that their concepts will be right, because they don't understand the issue of the empire. You see the point?
Yes, and that's exactly what it was, because when you really check out, you just mentioned how he established a republic, and Toussaint had a conflict. The conflict that he really had, which really led to his demise, is the fact that his lieutenant, which was the most savage one, Dessalines, was steady trying to tell him to eventually break away from France and declare independence, and in a way he never wanted to do that. But when he wrote the Constitution for Haiti, that really caused a conflict, and Napoleon really felt that he was really establishing independence anyway, and that's what brought about the war from France and everything. But
yeah.
I mean, again,
and that's also why they disallowed operations of progress in Haiti even to this day. And also, this is also why they keep moving that picture around in the art museum in this territory of Shaka Maxim, Philadelphia Art Museum, with the Moorish chieftain that was painted on that wood, and why France also bought that art to stop people from reproducing it, because the people's concept is that it's in the kingdom of Morocco on that side, when it's actually Shaka Maxim or Philadelphus, right where it is displayed. And he's the one who defeated Napoleon.
Yes, and he was nicknamed the Black Napoleon, as far as Toussaint.
Yeah.
And actually, Napoleon should have been called the White Toussaint, because Toussaint was a great military general, and and his lieutenant that took that replaced him was even better, Dessalines. And the thing is, to me, this is a very great history, a Moorish history that really has to be exposed a little bit more. And remember, I was telling you, I got that coat of arms off your website, and which is still the same Haitian flag, and the only thing that they did was revise it and put the fez, which is the little red cap, which is what they call that in Haiti? They call that the freeman's cap. And I'm like, wow, I never knew that. So in other words, this is a nation of free men.
Yeah, now you notice how they have 7 flags?
And they have the flags with the staffs, exactly.
There you go.
Yes. I mean, it's just another how should I say it? Just another, portrait of the same Moorish coat of arms, which goes back to the maroon.
They're showing the people the history, but the people
connection, the history. Exactly, and that's why I try to remind the people that hey, this is really the same Moorish Republic, and then actually, when you do the research. When you do the research, Haiti, or Haïti-Kiskeya, which is the original indigenous name, and I heard you mention indigenous, and it's very important because, see, indigenous, when you say it in Creole, which Creole is one of our ancient languages that goes back to the Igbo tribe in Nigeria and Arugo. I spoke to a Nigerian brother who told me that Creole comes from the Aruba tribe. Okay? Yeah. And he was telling me that, when you say Creole, when you say indigenous in Creole, it's indigène, which means in the genes. Okay, so we carry, you just mentioned the bloodline. That's why it's your birthright. You are absolutely correct, my brother, when you mention that it is your birthright. It is your estate. If you watch the movie that came out about Noah, there was a part in there where when he was passing on the birthrights to him, he actually told him that I pass this birthright on to you, my son. So with the passing of the birthrights come the passing of your estate, which is your blood. It's in the genes.
Now look at this. Remember when Obama went there and exposed the Masonic secret of the North Gate? Remember just the year before, Rahm Emanuel, the Jew, who was on his administration, ran for mayor of Chicago, and one of the first things that he issued, according to the cosmological designation of the North Gate being December the 22nd, 211, issued a proclamation telling the history of the estate of Northwest Amexem, North Amexem, Central, and South America comprising the Moorish Empire, and published it.
Exactly. Wow. Exposing that history.
Yes.
That is so true. And, you know, one thing I want to touch upon that you brothers always talk about trust. You know, it is very important and essential. And I heard a brother, you know, on a show a couple of days ago talking about that trust is really a biblical thing, which it is, because it's just really a Trinity concept where you have three entities or three parties. And, I could tell you, man, I'm a living example. Trust is very powerful because recently I did what's called a title transfer. And I realized that it's really the same thing you're doing with the birth certificate. And, you know, I know Brother Jonah, you know, mentioned that as far as Rule 220, which I feel like is really a heavy hitter that really explains to you that you need to claim that title. And as a matter of fact, there's a movie that came out called Jupiter Ascending, and the whole movie is about the girl claiming her title to get her trust. And, you know, they just actually putting this out for people to know. But, you know, I just recently transferred my car and put it in trust, and I actually got a customized plate that says Moors. It says Moors #1. It's a custom plate. Now, even though they gave me the decal, the expiration, I don't put it on it. I leave it blank. All it says is decal. There's no expiration because it's a private trust, and I had it attached to my 9/8. And I went to the tag agency to do this at the county. And, brother, ever since I've been riding with that tag, and, you know, I don't use no license, no commercial instrument because I'm not doing commerce with my vehicle. And, you know, so I'm riding around with a vehicle with no license. I have a plate that has no expiration date. And when police get behind me, all they do is keep going around. They don't even bother me because they cannot stop a private trust. So, this is what
people put all of their stuff in trust.
It is very powerful. It is very powerful.
Look at it like this. There's a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of things that we could or should do as we're developing and as we're walking through this transition period of the new order coming in. Now, the new order is already technically here. The issue is whether it will go north or south, if you get the point. I.e., will the heirs reclaim their estate, or will Rome get another mandate? That is the issue.
Man.
Before.
I hope that Roman contract is abolished.
There we go. Therefore, the heirs of the estate must speak up.
Hey,
and if
you know what?
They would not need to jump through all these hoops. You see the point?
Yes. Well, you know, that's why we're in the age of Aquarius, but enough people have not reached the age of majority. And this is what we need to teach the people, man, that, you know, you need to reach the age of majority, claim your estate, reclaim your birthrights, and, you know, claim that title, you know, so now you could be at the age of majority, because this is what's going on. And, you know, you brothers really expose it, and you know, it's great information to be exposed, and you know, it's something that the people really got to, you know, check out. And, you know, I told you before that I have a company called Indigenous Consulting, and my main thing is immigration. I do immigration law. Yeah. And, you know, it hit me not too long ago that immigration law is really where status is, because if you look at a form called the I-9 form, which is a USCIS form, immigration form, it tells you the main four statuses, which is, of course, everybody knows, citizen of the United States. Right below that, you have non-citizen national. And see, that's something, and this is a form that everybody sees whenever you get employed and you get a job, because it's an employment verification form, and it usually comes with your W-2, and it's an immigration form that deals with status. And it's asking you, which one of these statuses are you? Are you a citizen of the United States, which we know, according to Title 28, Section 3002, is a corporation? Are you a non-citizen national of the United States? Are you a permanent resident? Are you just an alien authorized to work? And these are the main four statuses.
Yes, let's take an excerpt from what George Washington, president, has said in relationship even to that jurisdiction. This is George Washington, quote unquote. The encouragement with which your majesty, he's talking to the Emperor of Morocco. George Washington, the encouragement which your majesty has been pleased generously to give to our commerce with your dominions, the punctuality with which you have caused the treaty with us to be observed, and the just and generous measures taken in the case of Captain Proctor make a deep impression on the United States and confirm their respect for and attachment to your Imperial Majesty. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity of assuring your Majesty that while I remain at the head of this nation, I shall not cease to promote every measure that may conduce to the friendship and harmony which so happily subsists between your empire and them, and shall esteem myself happy in every occasion of convincing your Majesty of the high sense which, in common with the whole nation, I entertain the magnanimity, wisdom, and benevolence of your Imperial Majesty, and may the Almighty bless your Imperial Majesty, our great and magnanimous friend, with his constant guidance and protection, signed George Washington. Therefore, in any legislation coming out of the jurisdiction of the United States, even under their color, they must construct remedy, mustn't they?
Exactly.
There you go.
And that's why I think it's very, very important for people to really, study the history of the Moors, not just, because sometimes I hear a lot of people kind of diss, the Moors and the whole Moorish history. And I think sometimes people need to go back into actually, of course we know, and I do agree because I dealt with the Moorish Science Simple, and it didn't take me long to realize that they were not serious, and I got out of that quick, okay, because it just didn't make sense to me what they were teaching, but I realized that, we just have people that just are not keeping this thing up the proper way, but the whole Moorish movement, and anybody, if you're a melanated individual, and you diss a Moor, you're really dissing yourself, because Moor just means a melanated person or individual. And before, we went into the Negro and all these things, we had Moreno, we had Moorish, we had Maroon, we had all these terms that goes back to describing a melanated individual. And, of course, we had terms before that. Okay, we have Kush, which I still feel is Kush is, the whole world is Kush. The whole, in the Bible, the first country mentioned in the Bible is Ethiopia or Kush.
Let's just cut to the chase with this. This is part of the problem with the people because of both the negatives and the positives of our history. They want to take the positive and forget the negative or disconnect. But it doesn't stop them from being who they are. And in fact, when they talk from a third-party perspective, they're telling the world that they are not descendable in law, and they don't know that. That's problematic. And, of course, we have to overcome that, and we also have to recognize the COINTELPRO operation set up under Hoover and Coolidge is designed by those persons administering some of these organizations to purposely cause that schismata that we have called the divide. And sometimes it's referred to as the great sellout. So that is a political activity, and it is incumbent upon those who know this to stop presenting this information as a belief system, which it is not. It is actually the true politics of North America and the modern contemporary world.
Yes, Taj. And, one comment I want to make, I don't want to hold up the whole line. I love talking to you, man. I love, love reasoning with y'all brothers. But, I really feel like it's important, it's imperative, man, that we really link with the Native American tribes. We really got to get to our indigenous roots. And I do agree when I hear the brothers say that Moor is a general term. I mean, yes, you are Moor, but what Moor are you? What tribe do you come from? Like I just found out Miami is the name of a tribe. Miami, like Florida, was mostly indigenous tribes, and Miami was a name of a tribe. So we have to go back to the tribal. We have to go back, in the Caribbean, we have the Arawaks, when you talk about Haiti and Jamaica and a lot of these places.
You got Caribe, Arawak, etc., and this is one of the problems with the schismata, where they don't recognize their bloodline nation state. They're looking at tribes, which is divide and conquer. The tribes are subordinate to the nation, to the estate. This is what has mandated the European to continue in his powers. You see the point?
But don't you think it's important for us to actually link up? Like I was watching on YouTube. I've seen the Gullah tribe, Gullah Geechee. Now they have a queen. Now I don't know if you heard, but I just heard a brother was telling me that they're getting ready to crown the Washita Queen in California sometime in June or July. I don't know. I heard about that, and that's to me that's powerful, man. That's something that we all need to come together. All Native people, all people that put themselves under that indigenous Moorish banner, which means Moor just means you a melanated individual. That means you just a Aboriginal individual. So we need to
listen. We need to cut out those apologetic statements like melanated individual. That's bullshit. They're Moors, period.
Thank you. But you got to give it to them. You got to sugarcoat it a little bit for them.
Listen to what I'm saying to you.
Because when you tell them they Moors, a lot of them want to be dissing Moors, and they don't understand when you diss a Moor, you just dissing yourself, because the word Moor or Moorish, going back to the ancient Latin, just means a dark-skinned person. So we know now we use the term melanin, or carbon, if you want to say carbon individual.
Listen to this. As long as we keep dancing around the bush, we give the European mandate, because truth needs no apology.
They
don't talk about the European as the lack of melanin, man. We need to stop being apologetic and just tell the truth.
Or how would you call them? Or how would you call them? The calcified man whose pineal glands are calcified.
Just call him who he is. He's European. He's a Roman. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. I agree with you 100%, man. Peace and love, my brother. And to just make one last comment, I really feel like, again, we need to link up with all the native indigenous tribes. Indigenous people need to link up. This is what's going on right now. We need to link up with all the indigenous people. And we also, I really feel like we also need...
Look at this, brother. Universally, that link that everybody keeps claiming universally across the planet is called nationalization. That is the ultimate political power that is used all across the planet to solidify a compromised nation, whether it's Hitler or whether it's Castro or whether it's Chavez. All of them nationalized their nation states. Our people keep thinking that it doesn't apply to them. That's why the Europeans still ruling.
Exactly. Well, they don't have no clue, They don't have no clue. But I just wanted to also say that, of course, we know that we was here. I mean, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and, I really love these scholars. Dr. Ben, these brothers have been around for a long time, man, exposing you are one of these brothers, of course. And, to me, if it wasn't, that's why I want to talk about honor our mothers and our fathers, man. It just ain't not just the people that gave birth to you, but these are elders, our ancestors that's been around, and especially trying to educate and wake up the people. We definitely got to honor these people, and we don't have enough people that came. Not everybody was saying the same information, but like you said earlier, it's really all the same thing, maybe expressed in different ways. But I really feel like that, they came before Columbus. We was here before Columbus, and at the same time, brother, it's been exposed that even the Olmecs, these people came from Central Africa, because I feel like there's also a disconnection from the motherland. Like I just found out that the lion is only indigenous to one continent. One continent.
Brother,
that's the motherland they call Africa.
Brother, we appreciate it. So we got some other people want to ask some questions, okay?
No problem, man. No problem. Peace. No problem. I know, me and Taj be getting into it. But, I'll yield the floor, man, and let somebody else get into it, man. No problem. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, man, brother. Thank you for your call. We appreciate it, brother. Appreciate it.
All right. Peace and love.
Right.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. Let me bring in another caller, area code 856. 5179, 856-5179. You're on the air.
Peace and love. Brother, take two. Peace, Taj.
Peace and love.
Peace,
brother yourself. Peace, high frequency family.
Peace.
Love the show. Appreciate the work. Couldn't say enough about you, Brother Taj. People need to listen up to what's really going on, because it's not a word game. They're serious with it. Yusuf, you had mentioned earlier in terms of being sharper in terms of when we go into trust law, in terms of where people are getting caught up in the straw man, the stramonos homo, I want to know if y'all could touch more on that, because I think a lot of people get caught up in the misclassification, and like Taj was just saying, justifying the misclassification and not sharpening that sword so that we all get sharper and know what we need to be doing.
You want to respond to that, Yusuf? Well, Yusuf,
I'm sorry. Repeat it. Wait a minute. Yeah, repeat it one more time, because I didn't hear everything you said. Repeat it one more time.
Do the best I can. Well, what I was saying was that you had iterated when it came to the nom de guerre and the straw man, and how it's important for people to start getting clearer on the study and know the difference in the lingo in reference to moving moving our state forward into the proper place. So I was just wondering if y'all could go into that in terms of, because the brother was just going back into, trying to use these soft terms to justify the cause that's going on. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I understand the question that you're asking. You want me to just to explain the straw man, the war name, as you just said, the nom de guerre, or this legal fiction entity? I want to explain. Okay, well, here's the thing. And this is what I teach. I teach law breaks down. You got to see how law breaks down and how it's all interconnected. All law comes from natural law, right? The laws of nature. And then from under that, you get what's called positive law, which is another name for man-made law. And then you get two classes of law called public law. Substantive law and procedural law. And then substantive law breaks into two classes called public law and private law. The public law is your constitutional law, your criminal law, your administrative law, your public international law, and your tax law. Right, that's public. People have to understand that. You can Google that, look it up in a Black's Law Dictionary, do whatever, but you need to understand how law is classified. And then there's a private side of law, and private side of law is contract law. And this is very important for people to understand, especially when it comes to things like dealing with these municipalities that have a quasi-public and quasi-private characteristic, and the Clearfield Doctrine, and when they come in and they start trying to contract with you. This is why you need to understand that contract law is private law. But contract law is private law. You have property law. You have tort law. You have status law. You have family law. You have private international law. All these things fall into the private side. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this to say a lot of times, you'll have people in the public and they'll try to say that this is some type of conspiracy talk or something like that. Well, when you really understand how the law breaks down into public and private, it's very easy for you to see that everything in the public is dealing with what are called corporate entities or legal fiction entities, or what you call this nom de guerre as the term that you just use. Some people call it a franchise. Has many different names that it goes by, but it is an entity that is utilized for tax purposes. And the IRS recognizes 7 different entities, and they are a trust, an estate, a corporation, company, an association, a partnership, and in what is called an individual. And the word individual does not mean a living entity. It is a word utilized to describe an organization. And you can find that out by looking up the word in a Black's Law Dictionary. So these words that you're using, this is for tax purposes. Now, you see a lot of Moors, they put in paperwork saying that they're tax exempt. To be tax exempt, you have to be operating privately. You have to avoid what are called minimum contacts. The federal government is only going to tax you. They only tax what they create. Let me say that again. They only tax what they create. When you incorporate yourself, that is their creation. All right? A corporation is deemed to be created for a public benefit. That is what you find in Hale versus Hinkle. That's what that judge said. Whenever you incorporate yourself, that's for the public benefit. Now, you can create a business through a contract, and that's what unincorporated business organizations are, or what are called trusts, which is what we teach of how to operate your entity privately, where the government can't intrude upon it, and it can't be taxed. Right? This is what it all breaks down to in this public and private issue. It really breaks down to tax, and you even have that in the Bible, where the when the Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and asked him, is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar? And he said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and the Lord what is the Lord. The private domain is the world of God and the laws of God, and we interact with each other through contract. This is why you got to get back to honoring. This is where your religion plays a part, because you are supposed to be honoring the Creator, and most people aren't. They give lip service to this, but they're not striving to understand the laws that regulate everything in nature and nature's God, and come to an understanding of that and honorably submit to that. Right? Because you're not to be afforded any protections if you're just giving lip service to something, or you're just filling out some paperwork thinking that this paperwork got you covered. It is about your conduct and your character that is going to be assessed, that needs to be properly assessed, and your intentions as they relate to your interaction with vice any type of governmental entity. But back to what I was saying, I don't want to digress too much. This is a taxable entity that they create, and their creation, they're going to govern it, and it's a fiction. So you can utilize that entity. You can be in the world but not of the world. This is what I try to get people to understand, this concept, that the world is governed by commerce. You're not going to, something short of some divine intervention or everybody in the world waking up at the same. I'm just a realist. I look around, like right now I'm in Compton. I'm in South Central Los Angeles right now. When I leave this phone call, I'm walking down, I see the real world. I'm looking at the world. I'm looking at my people. I'm looking at the work that has to be done. We have a reality that we have to deal with. The reality of the situation right now is that the world is operating through commerce. People need money. And so I'm having to think of ways, okay, well, how can we organize ourselves in a certain way and create an infrastructure or some sort of insular environment where we can govern ourselves and without inciting the ire of the federal government, because I've been part of organizations. We done went off and got land, 400 acres, and set up our own communities and everything. Next thing you know, federal government jumping out of helicopters, pointing guns at everybody's head, trying to kill people, saying that all this kind of stuff. So I've already been down some of those roads. So I'm trying to think, okay, well, how can I, assist my people in a way where we can kind of like utilize the system for our benefit? Because I'm out here in California. I'm down in Korea land. The Koreans, they got a whole section of Los Angeles to themselves. You know what I'm saying? They got their own businesses. They got their own banks. They got their own houses. They got their own communities. They got their own neighborhoods. They got their own law enforcement that, patrolling their neighborhoods and everything. Why we don't have all of that? Why we don't have all of that? And the only conclusion, I went to Hawaii. I was in Hawaii. The Japanese are there. They got a trust set up. They building stuff left and right out there. Hawaii look like Japan now. When you go into Hawaii and everything. And then the Mormons. I'm looking at the Mormons. I'm looking at how they operate. I'm looking at all these different organizations are making moves, and everybody's making moves through private trust. They understand how to aggregate capital, how to utilize trust certificates of unincorporated business interests to generate capital if they don't have the capital to build an infrastructure for their benefit. And this is all business. It's all business. So I don't want to, I try to focus on that. I don't try to, and obviously the nationality aspect is important because we need to have some cohesiveness. As Todd just said, we've been compromised, and we need to have some sort of unifying effect. And I have some of my ideas on that particular thing too. But business operates through fictitious entities. Even a trust on the private side is considered a fictitious entity. They operate through fictitious entities. So if you're not engaged in business, if you're not trying to do business in the world, which is why you go and get a 98 number, you go and get a 98 number because that is purposes. That means that you want to open up a bank account and you want to engage in banking. But if you're not desirous to do any of those things, then stay out the way. Don't get involved with those things because that's what those things are for. 98 numbers are for business. DBA is doing business as. A UCC is a Uniform Commercial Code. It's for commerce. It's for doing business. Don't try to mix these things up. These are all things that are for facilitating business. and business operates through fictitious entities. So I don't know if I can explain it much better than that. Is there something you want me to talk about other than that?
No, that was good. That was no, you know, because my thing is like, you know, we need to know these things. These things need to be drilled into us. You know, I sat with the elder many times, and you know, it's about cleansing, because we need to understand these things on both sides, and because they're not just coming at any of us one way. They're coming at all of us all kinds of ways.
My feelings on this is this: we're supposed to nationalize, and all the members, if the public is not a place for people who do not know what to do, and that's why they have schools, that's why they need to get licenses, degrees, and things of that nature. There's certain people who are supposed to be operating in the public. The rest of the people who are not qualified to be in the public, they need private, and you don't operate in the public. You can interact in the public who are competent enough to know how to make moves in the public. That is when you understand how trust structures are set up, you really begin to see like a lot of this is our fault for our failure. First of all, we're not educated about this information, and we split up. We're not a cohesive unit. You know, you got to be a cohesive unit, and then you got to allocate your resources, aggregate your resources, as well as you got to identify the people within your community who are competent enough to handle the business for the nation. You can't just be appointing people because you like them. You know, you're like, I like Yusuf Bell. I'm going to appoint him as a trustee over this real estate trust. No, you don't appoint me. I don't know nothing about developing an infrastructure on raw land or anything like that. You need to go get somebody who knows how to do that, and then they're going to come and build that for our people, and then the beneficiaries of that are all the members of the nation and everything, and they're going to receive their prorated share of whatever interest they put into that. And they can remain private. They don't have to be interacting with the government, having government numbers and all that kind of stuff right here. But it requires that you have a leadership that's put in place that is going to exercise a fiduciary duty of taking care of their people. You got to take that's what the sheikhs and everybody are supposed to be doing. You know, you're supposed to be taking care of your people. You have a fiduciary duty to your people, and in order to effectively do that, they got to be competent. And they got to understand business. You got to understand how the world works. I really don't, it's just in my opinion, nobody has produced to me some type of schematic of how we are going to build this, nation in a way. I don't see any other way to do it other than through a trust. I mean, it's just my opinion on it. It's like, okay, what's the plan?
Clear. Appreciate that. I'm going to yield the floor.
Okay.
Peace to the guys.
Hopefully I didn't get confused anybody.
As an interjection in support of what Brother Yusuf is saying, we must go back to the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, whereas the natural persons who are assigned to positions are based on meritocratic operations.
You are supposed to be. The more I study this, you are supposed to be. I understand the role your religion plays into this. I don't mean that. Religion is supposed to be a way of life, a science of life, in which you're supposed to be honoring yourself. The true laws that you're supposed to be living under are the laws of nature. The government is kind of like, for people who don't live by the laws of nature, people who don't honor God and everything, they kind of fall outside of that halo of protection, and then now you into the world of this, in this other world over here where you're open to attack. That's kind of how I look at it. It's like the laws are immutable laws, and you need to understand them, and that goes for your diet. That goes for your,
That would be called the parens patriae matrix.
Exactly. You got to know how to take care of yourself. We got some more callers. Let me bring in. We got somebody coming out of Philadelphia, 412-1568. Seems like the perfect black. What you got, man?
Hey, how you doing today?
How's it going,
all right,
brother?
Pretty good, bro.
Taj, how you doing? You have all that knowledge. It's just so impressive. I enjoy it.
How's it going, good brother?
Good. Hey, you were speaking earlier about the friendship, peace and friendship treaty.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, these treaties, they supersede the Constitution. Is that correct?
Yeah, of course. As a matter of fact, in law, they're looked at as one document.
Okay. Because a lot of people, they try to act like these treaties don't mean anything, but the Constitution itself.
Yeah, I understand that, but like Yusuf say, we need to study because we need to know how things function, not what we believe or what our emotions are. As an example, let's deal with what is known as the Supremacy Clause of the American Constitution, which is Article 6. It says all debts and engagements entered into before adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. And all treaties which are made or shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. And any laws or constitution of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And all officers in government must take an oath under that supremacy clause, i.e., who may deal in any position of authority, federal, state, or local or municipal, etc., under the jurisdiction of the United States, which is why Article 6 is referred to as the Supremacy Clause. And right in Article 6, it is clearly evident that these are binding against the United States, not for the United States. And a lot of times when people make statements like that, it is because their clubs don't teach the real history, and then they have to justify misclassifying the people as black and other brands that they've adopted from the European code operations of Carlos Linnaeus, i.e. what you would call COINTELPRO operations. And logically, persons who are not willing to tell the real history, both the good and bad, it is not in their political interest to preserve their different club thoughts to tell the real history, because the real history does not necessarily allow us to compromise into what we like or what we do not like. However, the fact of the matter is the very problems that we're all suffering, they are suffering from because they won't enforce the law. Yield the floor.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked that, because under Article 7, these common law courts, because they're basically dealing with the Roman civil law.
What Article 7? What Article 7?
United States Constitution.
Yeah, well, name the section so the people can relate.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it.
Remember, you should memorize it. If you're going to make a law statement, you should memorize it. It should be part of your memory to give support to the argument.
Okay, well, I will do. But when it talks about jury your peers and this decision from,
that's not Article 7.
I'm sorry, the 7th Amendment. I'm sorry, it's the 7th Amendment.
No, amendment. You're talking about Amendment 7 of the Bill of Rights.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Go ahead.
Where it talks about the a common law court, and where it says you're entitled to a jury your peers, and I thought the jury your peers were like the nobles. So would a jury your peers be like, you know, if you're a Bey, a L, can you basically the man that sort of
the jury of your peers would naturally be another national, which must be identified, because if they're not a national, they cannot stand in judgment of another national. Therefore, a black man cannot stand in judgment of a white man, which is status and not complexion. That must be understood in context and not how the people take it today, who have been subjected to the Carlos Linnaeus, Blumenbach a code system for Christian property. And what you recognize is most of the time when people are making them references, they're making them with connotative perspective and not in their denotative original etymological formation, which has to do with legal status, not complexion.
Okay. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to understand. And also when it says, like, the sovereign decrees the law, and if you declare the common law, does that kill all that remedy as far as, like, all that information as far as, like, dealing with status?
Let's look at it this way. Common law, in a sense, is almost like slave code, but it is really going back to the natural law. But the capacity to even make that argument, you got to at least go back to the common law first, which represents or is derived from the ancient customs and traditions of your forefathers, and thus the nature's law, or what is called nature's law and nature's God, which is demonstrated in the Universal Declaration of Independence.
Okay. Well, thanks, Taj. I'll keep it short, but you answered my question.
Right on, good brother.
Okay. Y'all there?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. All right, let me bring in the next caller then. I think this might be the last caller right here.
Right on.
Okay. 203-3537. High Frequency Radio.
Yeah.
You got a question or comment?
Yeah. Islam, I had a question.
Islam family.
Peace. About 20 years ago, I got jammed up with about a usury loan trying to go to college.
Yeah.
And I see how I had back in those times I was actually doing the voluntary servitude or the job or whatever you call it. And I seen how they did an administrative wage garnishment process on me. And as I'm tallying up through my my receipts and stuff, I'm looking at I actually paid them 3 times over. So my question is, my question is, now that I'm cognizant of all this, is it possible I could get some of that fiat back?
Well, you might consider. Well, Brother Yusuf comes up after this. Start considering why the what is called the discharge is presented in House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress, in session June the 5th, 1933, because you're supposed to be able to recoup that, number one. And number two, being aboriginal to the land, you were not supposed to be giving them anything in the first place.
True. Okay.
So
basically,
start looking at a recoupment instrument, because keep in mind, the Attorney General is the keepers of all alien properties, the comptroller of all alien properties under their admiralty law system of booty and prize. This is why the misclassification of the living under the nom de guerre straw, i.e. the 14th Amendment. So being your proper person and make a reclamation and a restoration of your estate. Look at it that way.
True. Okay.
And look at OID instruments type thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, because I was actually it took a while to even get a copy of the original usury note or promissory note, whatever they call it. I call it a usury note, but it took a while for me to even get a duplicate copy. And when I got it, it said that I can't even ask for a copy if I'm not in my proper person. So I had to ask what do you call it? I had to ask with this guy. He works for the. I put in a complaint with a banking association here up in Connecticut, and then he actually got the copy for me because I couldn't even get it. I was asking him for years to get it. They couldn't even give it to me.
So they're not going to give anybody any original instruments. even when, people are trying to, authenticate or claim the birth certificate, which is used on the stock market through the hypothecation of the dum diversas operations under unum sanctum, etc. And this is back to where they keep people dancing around the hoop. However, we must use all methods that we can to survive this transition period. This is another reason why the rest of the civilized world is killing them T-bonds, because they won't even honor the processes that they've constructed under the color.
Right. Now, one more question regarding the Treasury or T-bonds. Also, I was getting Treasury offset. So, is there a way to gain an account or a report from all that fiat that was taken from you by Treasury offsets as well?
Slow down. Brother Yusuf says when he's talking about estate, if you're talking about an estate, if you're talking about administrators, you're talking about an estate, and therefore you're talking about FOFers or trustees and a beneficiary. Now, if you're a proper person, you have right of claim of estate, command a report.
Okay. So that's really saying that the Treasury as well.
I would think that you would do. I would think that you would probably do something maybe to the IRS, maybe a 1099, or what you could do is you could start off by asking for a copy of your individual master file as well, right? And and then you can go from there and start finding out. And you have to decipher that. You have to ask for the it's probably be in the Atlanta campus, the IRS campus in Atlanta. You have to do a Freedom of Information Act request through them and ask for a copy of your individual master file. Tell them to also submit all the codes necessary to decode it. And then once you start decoding that, that'll probably give you the information you'll need to get additional information. But as far as any recoupment, you're in Connecticut, and that would be under Title 42A-3-305, which would be a claims and recoupment, and 42A-3-306, claims to an instrument. And you probably have to go under Article 8 of the UCC, which is securities, to to put a claim together on that. Right. Reclaiming for the recoupment. That's where you do it. But the recoupment also you have to demonstrate. You got to understand courses. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. When you're doing this commerce, you need to really read commerce, the commercial. If you're not going to do commerce, don't read the commercial code. It's just like playing Monopoly.
Right.
You don't know. You play the game of Monopoly, and they just open up the box, get the tokens, get the dice, get the community chest and chance, which is public and private, community chest and chance, all right, and start rolling the dice and start playing the game. Okay. Right. Then there are of us who will take the time before we even open up and put the game out. We say, well, okay, what are the instructions? Let's read the instructions. How to play it. Okay. And we go twice. All right. You can't put no $500 on free parking. Or okay, I see to get out of jail, you can either get out of jail free card, or you got to roll the dice 3 times. You got to serve your time. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I can develop these properties over here once I get all the titles. All right. And you know what I'm saying? And you begin to see like, hey, this is the game. This game came out in 1936. They were selling something with this game. Well, that's what it is. Right. You play the UCC, you play Monopoly. And with Monopoly, you use Monopoly money. Okay, but if you don't want to play Monopoly, get off the Monopoly board. Get into the real world and deal with the real world. But when you play commerce, you play Monopoly.
Okay, I got you. So it seems like I got a bunch of things I got to put together then in order to try to recoup some of it. Okay. All right.
Again, this is why we remind people, when you start studying and recognizing the fraud, don't just jump and start doing things. Study. Learn the law, learn history, and push your ego to the back. Also, it is in best interest of everybody to disregard their belief systems, because usually that hampers them. Start dealing with mathematics, geometry, and reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to deal without dealing with emotions, but it's hard not to when you get upset. I start looking at how much energy I transfer to them for no apparent reason, in the form of those FRNs or basically my time, my labor.
Now keep in mind the FRNs are bookkeeping entries against your estate. Always look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Don't look at that as money. Look at the Federal Reserve notes as private commercial paper that are used for double bookkeeping purposes for inputs, outputs of energy output for the exploitation under dumb diversus, etc. If you keep looking at them as bookkeeping entries, you'll better be able to look properly at how you should be looking at these whole processes. If you look at it as money, it's going to keep things gray.
Now, they started off with an administrative process when they initially did it. It was about 20 years ago when they started doing it. And
now stop right there. Whenever you hear the word administrate, think trust. And
yeah, so they start off with that. They call it AWG or administrative wage garnishment or whatever. And when they started it, I didn't know at the time that I had a pursuant to the Connecticut Constitution, I had a right for them to produce all these original documents and I actually had a right to even go to court on it if I disagree with the
all right. Now stop right there again. Stop right there again.
Yeah.
And when you talk about state, Connecticut state, remember all of the states are political jurisdictions that were created from the estate. They take the E off and they made the state. They're all what you would call administrative constructs for controlling or administering the occupied estate. Keep that in mind when you're talking.
Right. So, okay. I keep it in mind. I'm starting to get the concept. I'm getting the concepts. I'm just trying to work slow and try to apply it. And I had a little bit of success listening to y'all with the they tried to rear their ugly head up again, and I sent them some correspondence and it stopped. But I don't think I nailed the coffin shut though. I think it's still more. I don't think I can ever nail the coffin shut until I can either recoup some of this fiat back or do some of these processes that you explained earlier.
You're getting energy inputs back to, in other words, you might call it energy inputs back into the battery for the energy of your estate. Right.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. So, but thanks. That clears up a lot of stuff. And Yusuf with the actual code, I'm gonna actually replay this. I can't replay this because it's off the record now. I didn't write it down. I'll have to get back with you then, Yusuf. On that note, but thank you, Taj.
All right, my brother.
For giving me the insight. But I'm gonna yield the floor now. But thanks for all the insight.
Okay, you're welcome, brother.
And I'll keep studying, learning, and multiplying.
All right. Taj, I think that's it. We out of time, brother. Out of time. Great show. Hey, I was listening to you, man. I was liking what I was hearing and everything. I got to get used to your flow and everything, how you describe things. It's real nice. Checking you out.
On, good brother.
Real nice, brother.
All right. Peace, good brother.
All right, y'all. Peace. You've been listening.
High frequency.
High frequency, y'all. Coming up next, Natural Law Hour. Peace to the guys. See y'all later. Have a wonderful day.
Peace.
You're listening to Mobile Oasis with your host, Taj Tarik Bey. Exclusively on High Frequency Radio Network, the baddest radio network on the planet.
Doing this thing all the way live.
High Frequency Radio.